Hey, welcome to Storytime with Ellie podcast. And I am thrilled today to have our special guest who will be joining us, took a time out of his busy schedule to tell his story. He is an entrepreneur, and he is also known for the man that OJ Simpson was convicted of robbing at gunpoint.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did I say that right? Let's welcome Bruce.
Bruce Fromong,
I
the
don't
guy,
know.
guy that was robbed by OJ Simpson. Yeah,
I know, it's like the name when I'm so sorry. It's like sometimes with names, I'm like, oh, am I saying that? I have to practice the names. But
yeah. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
yeah, so like I said, we are thrilled to have you here. You took time out of your busy schedule, and we know you have one, absolutely. And
My
we,
pleasure.
yeah, thank you, thank you. And we bringing you on today so you can tell us a little bit about yourself, because there is so much to talk about. Like I said, entrepreneur. You've done so much in your life, and you have a great story to share. So again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. So
Yeah, pleasure.
let's start with let me see. Let's start with let's start with where you're from. Let's start with that. Let's start where you're from.
I originally grew up in the Pacific Northwest, up in Oregon,
Oh,
and I'm one of those old school kids. I've worked all my life. When I was 5 or 6 years old, comic books used to say, "Sell seeds, sell Christmas cards,"
oh my
and
God.
my neighbors used to see me coming, and they'd go, "Oh, what is he selling now?" Because I've always been an entrepreneur. I grew up. I worked in the fields during the summer, hoeing mint, picking potatoes, baling hay. As I got older, I rode horses, kind of like what you see in the Old West.
Oh
I mean, we
wow.
actually we actually rode BML fence lines, repairing fence lines, and they'd bring supplies out to us. We'd be out there for we wouldn't see somebody for a week, week and a half, and they'd drop off supplies to us as we were riding down the fence line, just fixing fences.
Wow.
So yeah, I've worked all my life. Went to 13 schools in 12 years. My old man was a heavy equipment operator, so moved around a lot, and which kind of worked into my life later on, because I did 20 years in the military, 20 years Navy, so I did a lot of traveling
Oh
then
wait.
as well.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
So
like
I've always worked, come from a hardworking family, both my parents hardworking. And yeah, it's just, I enjoy what I do.
it paid off because you've been
Yeah.
very successful what you've done. So very good for you. But you had mentioned the military. What brought you into that? What made you get into the military?
Well,
You
early
mind
on,
share a little of that for us?
yeah, well, in high school, I was a basketball player. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. So, and while I was still in high school, I married my high school sweetheart.
Oh,
Um, mo- Most people wait until after they get out of school. I couldn't stand to be away from her. And I used to call her up and I'd say, if I asked you to marry me tomorrow, would you? And I called her up one day and said, will you marry me tomorrow? And like always, she said yes. I said, good, let's get married. And she said, wait a second, you're not
wow.
joking. And I said, no. So we ended up getting married the middle of our senior year. And back in my day, the
Oh my,
only time you got married in high school is if you had to. Well, we didn't have kids for 2.5 years, but I ended up, as soon as high school was over, we moved away. I went into the construction business. Well, in Oregon, it rains a lot. The old joke is, if the sun comes out, we sacrifice a lamb because we've done something wrong.
wow. I think I need sun. I live in the Sunshine State, so I need sun.
Yeah, well, Oregon, we get 10, 12 good weeks a year, especially down on the Oregon coast. So,
Oh wow.
but no, it got to where I was only working 1 or 2 days a week, and I came home and said, "Honey, we can't live on this." And I walked into a recruiter's office, said, "I want to join."
Oh,
And yeah, a couple weeks later, I was on my way to boot camp. So,
wow.
and that was, at the time, it was a means to, meet a need.
Mm.
And
It
it
wasn't even a
wasn't,
second thought. Yeah, you just did it.
no, no, I just did it. And it wasn't planned to, as a career. But while I was in, I got my education, I got my degree. And yeah, I ended up doing 20 years and raised 2 kids, drugged them around the world. We went to Australia for a couple of years. Fantastic place to live. If you've never been to Australia, great
Oh, I
place to
interview a lot of
live.
people from Australia, but I've never been to Australia. I was always afraid
No,
to
it
take
was,
that flight. It's like
yeah.
18 hours or something.
Oh, it was a long flight, yeah, because you fly from um, and the funny thing was I'd been stationed in Bremerton, Washington.
Mm.
Now this is in December, so we're in the middle of winter. So
Yeah.
we're wearing big, heavy coats, hats, all this kind of stuff. And we fly down to Sydney. We get off the airplane in Sydney in December, which is
Different
the middle of
summer.
their summer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's kind
you
of
know,
fun. But I knew where
it,
you came from.
yeah, so it was hot as could be. So we're shedding clothes, but yeah, we ended up going to Australia for a couple of years. Beautiful place to live. My wife used to say, "Let's have lobster tonight." So at lunchtime, I would throw on my trunks, run over to the beach, grab 2 or 3 bugs meaning lobster. That's what they call them
Yeah,
over
cool.
there.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and we'd have lobster. We had all kinds of seafood. It was just a beautiful place to live. Very small community of Australians and Americans, probably
Nice.
5,000 people at the most. And yeah, we spent 2 years there. So that was a great time.
Yeah,
One of my
that's
more memorable
yeah.
stations.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. Like I said, I've never been to Australia, but maybe someday if I'm brave enough. Or maybe I could
Oh,
do a few stops on the way. I might be a couple weeks here, a couple weeks, and then end up in Australia. Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
all we did was change planes in Hawaii and then right on to Australia. And I was on the western side. I was 850 miles north of Perth.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
and you
we
were
were
in the
in
service. So you're in the
yeah,
service. Do you mind
yeah.
if I
And
ask? Yeah, what did you do? Where did you serve or
well,
what
when I started out, I was a supply guy, I was logistics.
okay.
And um, I did that for, I guess it was 8, 9 years. And then I got my degree and I became a counselor. And
Okay.
so while we were still stationed in San Diego, well, when I came back from Australia was when I met a very good friend of mine, Todd Christensen from the Oakland Raiders, if you recognize that name.
Okay, yeah, sure. Mhm.
And the very first time I met Todd, I was sitting in church and he came in a little bit late and there was only one chair in the meeting room. And I'm looking at this big guy coming in with a curly hair and this mustache, and he's just so big. And after church, I'm telling my wife about this huge guy. He ought to play
Oh, that's fun.
football. Well, the next night we were at some friend's house for a family home evening, and I was telling them about this guy at church. I saw, oh, he ought to be playing football. This guy's so big. And they're kind of laughing. And they dig out their photo album and they show me a picture of the guy. And they said, is this guy? And I said, yeah, that's him. And they
Oh,
flipped to the next page and there's a picture of him in his uniform.
wow. So this may have been the start of your career. We'll get into that later. Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, so
Cool. Yeah.
yeah, and the Christiansons and my family became very good friends, and we
Nice.
went to parenting classes together, and
Mhm.
yeah, that was the beginning of it in
Yeah.
Alameda.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, could you or would you mind sharing maybe some or a little bit of stories on being in the service, like anything that you could think
you
of?
know, I enjoyed it, and well, my whole family did.
Mm.
Like I say, it wasn't meant to be a career when I first started out. It
No
was
doubt.
it was a means, but my wife came from a fairly poor family, and she liked the security. We enjoyed, it was nice. We had both of our kids at Balboa in the Bay Area, and being in the military, it was very inexpensive that way. We liked the benefits, and
I think
we
it'd be
didn't
great.
mind. We didn't mind moving every 2 to 3 years. Although my stint in San Diego turned out to be almost 7.5 years
Mhm.
between my sea duty and my shore duty, and that's where what I do now kind of got a little bit of a start
And that's
because my
coming
yeah,
in.
we were going
Love
to
it.
we lived right above what used to be Jack Murphy Stadium, where the Padres and the Chargers
Mhm.
used to play football. And my son would go to Padre games. My son, like all young boys, would go down by the fence and talk with the players. And he became friends with Steve Garvey. And so he was talking with Steve, and and my son was a great baseball player himself.
Oh, good. Very nice.
And he was in Little League and loved the game. And he'd talk with Steve about baseball and stuff. And Steve was a very gracious player, unlike some athletes I know these days that really keep their distance between them and
Right.
the fans.
And celebrities too. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So it's
And
nice. Humble.
but Steve was great. Steve was always great. In fact, I finally the 1984 World Series was the San Diego Padres against the Detroit Tigers. And just a quick little story. My son asked me, could we go to the World Series? And I said, well, because it was like a 2-day waiting in line to get tickets for the game. And I told him, I've got to work. I can't do that. So, but I told him, I'll see if I can get you a World Series souvenir. So after work, I went down, I parked, and the souvenir store is almost right beside the ticket office. So I tried to get through, and just as I'm trying, I said, excuse me, can I get into the souvenir store? And they started, and they said, sure. And just as I started to go through the line, they opened the ticket office and everybody started shoving and pushing. And when they stopped pushing, I'm standing in front of a ticket guy. And he says, how many tickets for which game? And I'm going, 2 tickets, game 1?
Yeah. Oh my God. It was like you got flushed in there. Wow.
Yeah. And back then, World Series tickets were only $25.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're talking a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went home, told my son, I said, son, I'm sorry, I couldn't get you anything from the souvenir store. All I could get, and I pulled them from behind my back, were these.
What a story. Wow. I
Yeah.
love that.
So he got to go to the game, and Steve was warming up, and he saw my son sitting way up on the fence there because overlooking him because Steve was warming up in the outfield. And he said, Steve Garvey, here he is warming up for game 1. He said, throw me your glove. So Eric throws him his glove. He runs in, signs his glove, brings it up and throws it back to him.
Interesting.
Just how the kind of guy he was.
Wow.
Nice guy.
Nice.
We need more athletes like that.
Yeah, these are great stories. I love that. It's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're at the game. But now we can fast forward a little bit to yourself when you decided to go into a sports memorabilia store. You decided to open this. What was that?
Well, it started as a hobby.
Okay.
With my son and I, because we ended up moving on. I got restationed in Central California. And at that time, we're talking 1987, I believe it was, 88. And one of the 2 hot players back then were Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire from the Oakland A's.
Okay.
And big names back then. We all know the story with the Bash brothers and everything. Well, my son, we're collecting baseball cards together, and he's trading with his friends. But then he got the idea, and we're talking about business. So we started buying and selling some cards. And then he was buying cards at school, and on the weekend I'd take him over to the Bay Area, and he would sell the cards that he had bought at school to the dealers over there, and he was making a nice tidy little sum.
So then it was your son. He's a chip off the old block. So it was your son that kind of gravitated you into doing this a little bit. Yes, right?
Right, because I wanted to teach him about business.
Nice.
That's where my degree is.
Yeah, nice.
And it got bigger, and we started doing shows. We started doing sports card shows. Nice. And then I started promoting shows. And because I didn't like the way shows were, we started selling cards out of our driveway. Back then, you could be driving down the street. Wow. Yeah. And then we started doing shows, and then I started promoting shows. And there was a guy that lived in the same town I did. His name was Mike Gilbert. And he went into one of the sports card shows. And he was talking because he knew a couple of athletes. And back then, you brought an athlete into your business just to give away autographs, to get people to come in. There were very few athletes could really demand a price for their autograph. You had Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, guys like that. But back then, even a Mickey Mantle autograph was $25 max.
Mm.
I mean, and these are legends. Anybody that knows about sports,
Yeah, well, we have a
those
lot of
guys
people
were legends.
that do.
And
Yes.
that's the reason you brought them in. You gave away the autographs usually.
Mm.
And but the guy at the sport, and he was asking, what to, because he'd done a few things, but he really wasn't tuned in. And so they told him, hey, you must know Bruce Fromong here in town. He promotes shows. And they said no. So they gave him my phone number. He calls me up. We get to talking, and we started a company called Locker 32. And this is back in probably 89, 90. And the first three athletes that I found out that he knew were two guys from the Oakland Raiders, Tim Brown and Marcus Allen.
Okay.
And then the one that I'm most famous with, OJ Simpson. And those were the first three guys that we ever represented.
You went way back with him. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This is clear back to, to, like I say, 89, 90 is when I first started actually representing players.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So, but I'm still in the Navy. I've
You-
got, I've got a lot. Yeah, I've got a lot of time left before I retire. So I'm working my regular Navy job as well. And luckily by that time I was far enough up in rank. I didn't work weekends or anything like that. And I could, if I needed time off, I could get it. So we're starting to take these athletes to different shows, and we're starting to charge for autographs. And so, like I say, those were the first three: Marcus Allen, Tim Brown, and OJ Simpson. And we're putting them into shows in the local area, in LA, San Francisco. And once Mike met me, then we started kind of branching out. We started doing some shows in bigger markets, and putting them out into actual sports shows.
Wow. Okay. So that's how you start doing this. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it was just a great, it was one of those turning a hobby into a business type thing.
And you did it. Now you also opened up stores, correct?
Yeah, we've had 5 stores in the past, and our last one was in Lake Tahoe, yeah, which was fun. I mean, it's a hassle. I don't know how people are making it nowadays with stores. Sports cards and memorabilia. It's a very interesting business. It's gotten cleaned up a lot, because back in the old days there used to be a lot of fraud. Anybody that's in the business may remember Operation Bullpen back in the early 90s. There was a lot. The FBI was even involved. I mean, people went to jail for faking autographs.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah, think about it. I mean, yeah.
And we're not talking just a few $1,000s. We're talking multi-millions of dollars were being done. It was a 3.5-year operation. So yeah, it took a lot of time, and they busted a lot of influential people that were in the business. So that was one of the things that led to what they have now, some of the third-party authentication companies.
Okay. All right. Now, do you still have the stores, or are you doing everything online, or nothing?
No, our last store was the Tahoe store, and we sold that in, I think it was 06, 07. No, it was probably about 06. Yeah, it was before OJ, so it was probably in 06.
Okay, yeah, because I'm fascinated. I was fascinated because I was looking up some information on about your stores and what you did, and how did you get all those cards and stuff autographed authentically? How did you retain that? How did you bring them into the store, so to speak?
Well, a lot of it, is traveling, doing shows, trading with other dealers. You build a network. It's just like, a clothing store. You find your network, you find people that you can trust, and plus you get tied in with the card companies. 1989, Upper Deck had just opened up. So and the big card back then was the 1989 Ken Griffey, was the huge name back in sports back then with the Seattle Mariners. He did a lot to infuse interest into baseball and baseball cards. It was a fresh young face, and people really gravitated to him. So Yeah, and we just built it. We started with a very small brick and mortar store. I mean, it was small.
Yeah, but to get 5 stores, you were on fire. I mean, really,
Well, we
I mean, 5 stores.
we we built it. We just built up, and we did one, and then we did another one, and then we'd sell one, and then we'd build another.
Oh yeah,
So
today it
yeah,
would be online. Today it would
right,
probably be online for that type of stuff. People to
yeah, and
which is still probably a good thing. I mean, you had a connection with that. Not that I'm telling you to go back into that business. I mean, it's
well,
kind
I
of still
still
out
am.
there. Okay.
I still
Oh,
am. I still do. My online presence is mostly on eBay. I
okay.
do it just to, I put out some good deals out there for people so they can get some good prices on some of the stuff.
Okay.
And
So real quick, how if somebody wants some of this memorabilia, how would they reach you? How can they get a hold of you? Do you
on
want to?
eBay, they can look for LV-Live 365,
It's LV.
dash Live 365.
Okay, live 365. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Right now, I probably have 170, 180 items up there right now.
Oh wow.
Everything from sports cars to signed jerseys and helmets and things like that.
Can I ask you the most expensive piece in the store?
Right now is probably it's a very rare Willie Mays autographed card, and
Oh,
it's what they call a PSA 10 autograph, meaning it's gem mint. And the card, it's a $2,000 card. I
okay.
try to keep some of the lower price stuff. A lot of my stuff is $100, $200, $300. I mean, there's stuff on there for $40 and $50.
Wow. Okay, so cool. If anyone wants that.
It's a broad range. Yeah, I don't carry a lot of there are a lot of guys out there. Two most expensive autographs in sports right now are Michael Jordan uh, and Tom Brady.
Oh, of course, Tom. Do you have any Tom Brady stuff?
Yes,
Oh,
but I not online. But yes, I do have Tom Brady
oh
stuff.
wow. Well, then there you
Yeah,
go.
for
Wow.
that's usually for wholesale for dealers and stuff,
Gotcha.
because I can't discount it a lot because of the cost that he gets per autograph. Same thing with Michael.
Yes. Wow. That's pretty cool. Tom
You
Brady.
know, and like Michael, he came into our store up in Lake Tahoe one time. He was playing at the tournament, and the night before, I happened to be playing blackjack with him and Dennis Rodman, and they were all at the same table. And the next day, he came into the store and to get some memorabilia to give to friends.
Mm.
And my son was deployed at the time, and so I asked to get a basketball signed. I was able to, and he signed a basketball for us. For
Wow.
my son, it's a one of a kind ball. It happened to be a prototype that one of the companies sent to the Bulls. They decided that they didn't approve it, so my rep at this particular company gave it to me because he knew my son was a big fan of Michael's. And like I said, I just happened to have it there. The opportunity presented itself, and I was able to get it signed for my son. It's in his private collection.
Wow. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I bet your son was
Yeah,
thrilled about that. Wow.
yeah. And I used to do postcards for my son when he was deployed.
Oh,
I'd have his name, his FBO address on there, and I used to just ask athletes, "Hey, my son is deployed overseas right now. Would you mind, if you want, just sign it, or best wishes, or whatever you want to put on it."
well, yeah. So he's
And
got quite a collection then.
oh
So
yeah, he's got over
wow.
150 postcards from different athletes. And
Oh,
when
wow.
my son was Navy as well.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I heard you say.
After high school, he didn't want to go to college, and he wanted to get out on his own a bit. So he went into the military. Well, when he first went in, and he was telling people about who we were. I mean, none of the OJ stuff. We weren't famous or anything, but
Oh,
by
we're
that
gonna talk
time.
about him later.
Yeah, but
That's
or
okay.
infamous. I'm not sure which it is, but we, his friend, the guys that he's with, and especially when he got to his first battalion, in the beginning, we're like, "Oh yeah, sure, right." And then he started digging out the pictures, and on top of that, on the weekends, lots of times he would fly up and go with me and help me do signings and stuff. And
Oh,
he'd
wow.
come back with photos with him with these athletes, him and Joe Montana, or
Oh,
him and
wow.
Jerry Rice, or
Okay.
him and Earl Campbell, or whoever. And then they started realizing he's not joking. He really does know
That's
these people.
yeah, because they could have thought he was making it up. Because how many
Right.
people could say they have that many autographed cards or just everything he
Yeah.
had? You would almost think,
Yeah.
it's
And he's
one of those
getting
things
these
that make
postcards, you know, every now and then he's getting these postcards in the mail.
yeah,
And
that's
so
wild.
then it got to be the thing that everybody would try to get to the mail to see who he was getting a
Oh my
postcard from.
God. That is hard
And
to believe though. That is a hard, you'd almost think he's got somebody in the States sending him all this stuff like, making
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's cool though. I
Then
mean,
after a while,
it's
but
not,
like I say, then his buddies started, knowing, and some of his buddies actually came with us a few times and said, yeah, we hung out with so and so this
oh my God.
weekend, and we did this and we did
Wow.
that. So they knew that he was the real deal.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, you need to bring it up. Talked about your son a few times. Do you mind? What is he doing today, your son?
He's a disabled vet. Uh,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
Sorry.
he's injured in service,
I'm sorry.
but he's doing well, and he's got his own business now, and stays busy, and
Okay.
married with my beautiful little granddaughter.
Oh, I
Now,
got one. I got a couple. I have another
yeah,
one on the way. October 13th.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh wow, fantastic! So right around the corner, then
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah. October 13th. She scheduled the due date.
Wow.
It's very end. She scheduled it for October 13th. And the doctor's like, I think we have a problem with this date. And she's like, oh no, no, that's the date I want. It's like, ah. So yeah. Or
Is it a Friday?
yeah. It is
Ah,
a Friday. That's what made it funny, because the doctor's
yeah.
like, I don't know, we have a problem with the scheduling, because we gotta like maybe, and she's like, well, he goes, well, it's October 13th and it's a Friday. She's, oh no, that's what I wanted. She loves Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm excited.
yeah.
Kid. Yeah, just
Yeah,
like
no, that's great. No,
yeah,
I've been very lucky. I've got two very healthy kids that have done very well in
nice.
life. I got 7 grandkids and one
Oh,
great
wow.
grandson.
Can't ask for anything better than that. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Oh
life
God,
is
great
good no
mindset.
matter what. You can look at life, the glass can be half empty or it can be half full.
Exactly.
That
How
is
you
a
look at it. Exactly.
yeah, it's a personal decision, which is
Yes.
it.
Mm,
And I've always been very optimistic about things, even with the way my life has gone a few times, that, the glass is always half full. There's always something to be grateful for.
absolutely. And it's a good attitude. It's a good way to look at things. And when
Yeah,
you look at like that, I think you can get through a lot more as well.
yeah. And traveling the world, in the military,
Lived a great
I've
life.
seen, I have seen true poverty and
Mhm.
true despair in people's lives and the way they live. And I'm don't not meaning to be
Very
rah
lucky.
rah, but
Yeah.
yeah, we are a very lucky nation, and we are a very privileged nation with what we have, and I'm very grateful to live in this great nation.
That, but I want to get back onto something with you about your Tahoe. Um,
Yeah,
Before you opened up that store, you have if you don't mind sharing again, there was a little story about your mom.
yeah.
Because
The
kind of the
Tahoe store,
university. Yeah,
yeah,
kind of.
the Tahoe store was that was going to be our flagship store.
Mm,
It was a way for me to I was bringing the whole family together. We had closed all of our stores. That was going to be our one store. And it was a beautiful store. And it was kind of, my mother worked very hard building our other stores up. And
so your
we
mom was
we had
more into
everything.
your life too,
Yeah.
like a business partner,
And
not just your
my
mom.
mom loved sports. Yeah,
Wow.
she had, people would come into the store and they would try to, figure, oh, here's a woman, and my mother was getting up in age. She was in her, our first store, she was in her mid 50s and then into her 60s. And then, oh, well, this is a woman in a sports card store. She doesn't know much. And boy, she could just spout off stats and who played where,
She
when
must
they
have met a
played.
lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, just before 3 days before we, I talked to her on a Tuesday. I talked to her Tuesday afternoon, and we had talked about, we were getting ready to move her because I was going to move her on Friday to Lake Tahoe,
Mhm.
and everything was ready to go. And I talked to her and I said, well, Mom, I love you, and I'll see you on Friday. And she said, I love you too. We'll probably talk before then. Well, unfortunately, I got a call the very next morning that her and my sister had they were playing bingo. And they were less than a quarter of a mile from the house when they were hit head on by a drunk driver. And my mother was killed instantly, and my sister is crippled, handicapped for life. And it's just, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I mean, less than 12 hours ago, I just talked to her.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah. And it was so strange because I jumped in the car. I drove up there and the whole house was packed. The store was packed. Everything was ready to be moved. And it was just, I mean, it was devastating. And my sister had two, I think, my sister had two 14-year-old twin daughters,
Oh,
and she's in the hospital. We don't know if she was going to live.
oh my God.
She was, it just really, I mean, it broke arms, legs, pelvis. The seatbelt broke. She went through the windshield.
Oh,
And the guy that hit her,
we didn't even know.
not very he walked away.
Yeah.
And
Usually the way it is.
Yeah, had been at a bar. His sister had been the bartender, and the owner of the bar had helped him out to his car. Yeah,
They should, we've talked off camera on this whole thing, right? It's just devastating.
yeah. It just really rocked everything, and my whole family. Because, like I say, I was bringing the whole family to Lake Tahoe. That was going to be our swan song.
I got you. But your sister did live.
Yeah. Yeah, we were getting a house up there. My son was coming up. My mother was coming up. We were all going to run the store.
So
I mean, and so we did open the store, but we had and so my son ended up running it. I ended up not moving up there because it was just, it took a real toll on me.
Oh yeah.
And but my son went ahead and opened the store and did a fantastic job with it. And but it wasn't what he wanted to do permanently, him and his wife. They had plans for what they wanted to do with their lives as well. So, but they got it up and running, and a beautiful store, and
good for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the sadness that came, prior, how it turned around.
Yeah, it's a real hard thing.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is my mother had been an alcoholic, and she quit drinking back in the early 1980s because she was afraid that she might hurt somebody.
Yeah, no, I get that. I totally understand that.
Because she had drank a few times and had a couple of close calls, and she said, "I can't do this anymore."
Isn't that something how it turns out that way? How strange.
Yeah, so it's sad. It's really sad. So I've become a big advocate, against drunk driving, and anytime I can do anything, charity events and stuff.
I was going to ask you your participation on how you're an advocate, but what do you do? Do you go to meet? Do you talk to? I think I mentioned this to you. Really, I also was hit head on by a drunk driver, and I did do some advocate. What I did though, I would go in and speak to people that were convicted of drunk driving. So they wanted me to speak to them about my story on what happened to me that night. So these people could feel through a victim that survived. And that was why they kept calling me to do this. Like, not many people could say they lived through.
Yeah. You were telling me about your experience and how close, how lucky you were to have survived.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that it doesn't stop just with the people that were involved in the vehicles. There's families, and there's, my grandson was asking because my mother the summer before had told my grandson, because he had came up that summer, and they ran around the beach and they flew kites, and they did all the things that a grandma and grandson would do together.
And you're right. You're 100%.
They had plans to be together, that again, that next summer. And my grandson is saying, well, when am I going to go see grandma again? And we're saying grandma's not here anymore.
And this is what the advocate, they usually will ask you to do. They want you to tell these people that were convicted these stories. Well, you just Just to help them understand what you just said. There's
Yeah.
more than, the person that they killed. It's who they left behind. They destroyed families. And the funny thing, and again, this is your podcast, but with myself, naturally, I always end the story. With myself, I was visiting friends that evening. One had surgery, and the other one just asked me to stop over to talk, because I do coaching as well. So it wasn't even that. I was drinking, party, nothing, and I won't do it. To this day, I will not. And even prior to that, I will not drink and drive. I own a towing company. I would get cars towed. And today I Uber. Anytime I'm going to go out, anyone I'm with, we Uber. We do not drink and drive. And you could ask any of my friends who are like, oh, Ellie with the Uber. I won't do it. And that was even before my accident, which was strange when that happened to me as well, kind of like your mom. It was like, God, of all people to get hit, because it's like, I was a nut about it. I stopped at 2 houses that night, both offered me something to drink, and I said, I can't. I'm driving.
Yeah.
Now, how
Yeah.
crazy, just like your mom.
Yeah.
Here you're like, end of story. But yeah, move on to
No, absolutely. And
these are the things that
until,
we're doing. It's good that you talk about it, because it's good that
yeah, well, it's good therapy for me as well, and it helps me, it helps me deal with it. I mean, that was back in 2003. So we're talking 20 years ago, and I still have to, it's something I still deal with, to this day.
You can never forget that. How do you
Yeah.
forget something so devastating? You just won't forget.
Yeah.
It's like another
It's
part of your
difficult.
life, just like another
Yeah.
part of your life. Not that I want to compare it to your mom.
Yeah.
But you also, let's see here. You also got involved with. Let's talk a little. We'll bring a little bit about OJ Simpson.
Sure.
How did you meet
The elephant in the room.
elephant that's in the room?
Yes.
Wait, where is this? Is it on there? No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want people to know about you. But how did
As
you?
Robert Williams used to always say. "Mm."
Yeah. Okay, but how did you? I don't want to say get entangled, but how did this happen? How did you become friends with OJ? Because you were friends, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, we were.
That's
I
right.
mean,
I understood that. Yeah.
not only was I involved with his management company, we were his management company,
Okay.
but we were friends as well. I mean, we went to dinners together, we traveled together, we did things together. And I remember the very first time I ever met OJ, I mean, you expect, somebody with airs and stuff, and it was just a regular guy. I mean, it was, it was just like sitting down with your friends. I mean, hey, how you doing? It wasn't, I'm OJ Simpson, the star athlete, the legend, the Hall of Famer. It was just, how you doing? How you been? What do you? Oh, you're in the military, really? What do you do? I mean, he was interested in my story, as well as me wanting to, talk to him about his story, and that really impressed me.
Yeah.
That he was, he wanted to know about me as well when I first met him, and that was one of the things I liked about him.
Genuine.
And yeah, he was very genuine with when he talked with me, and it was one of the things that I really enjoyed my time with him, and dealing with him. And I could always count on him. If he said he was going to do something, he would do it. If he said, I'm going to be at this appearance, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do, where I've had a lot of athletes, oh yeah, don't worry, I'll be there. And then, just flaky reasons. Oh, I couldn't make it. I'm sick.
It's funny because he was obviously a true friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I counted not only as a client, but as a friend. I mean, my wife and I had been to his house before, and ate and talked with him. He knew my family. He called my mother on her birthday and sang happy birthday to her. And my mom goes, OJ, you can't sing worth.
Yeah.
But and he laughed and he says, yeah, my kids say the same thing. And I'm going, Mom, don't say that. That's OJ. And he thought it was funny. He got a kick out of it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he'd call her on her birthday. So, I mean, it wasn't just a business relationship. And that's what I liked about it.
You knew him probably better than anybody.
Yeah,
Because,
myself and my business partner, I mean, he knew my business partner, all their kids. He knew my kid, I mean, yeah, it was just, yeah,
oh,
he
gee,
was, he was genuinely interested in us as people, as
right.
well as his management company.
Okay, so now I'm gonna throw this one at you. Like,
Mhm.
what was your reaction when you heard that he possibly murdered his wife?
June 12th, 1994.
Um,
Yeah. Um, it was just disbelief, I mean, that, well, at that time, nobody even thought about it being OJ,
right,
uh, uh, as a possible, culprit.
gotcha.
And, I mean, because, we heard about it and, uh, OJ had gotten the call. My business partner called me, and um, my business partner was supposedly up in Yosemite at the time. OJ was back in Chicago, and flew back out. Tried to get hold of him. We couldn't call him because I mean his phone was just jammed up big time.
Oh, yeah,
And
especially,
that whole time is just kind of a blur because everything that was going on, and the few days that were going on, and then naturally we all know, about the chase,
yeah, yeah, it was a famous chase. I mean,
the
there were so
slow,
many, like, cartoons, I think even
yeah, the slowest chase in
that white
LA history.
Bronco,
Yeah,
the white
yeah,
Bronco.
yeah, the slowest chase in LA history.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And what people don't realize is, and they may or may not have heard the stories, but OJ, even though OJ and Nicole were divorced,
Right.
these are what people always say. OJ killed his wife. This was his ex-wife. Now, if a person is guilty of wanting their ex dead, then there's a lot of people out there that are guilty of. But I mean, and the funny thing, my wife and I had been down to his house about 6 weeks before, and we were sitting around the house, and uh, OJ being his cordial self. It was funny because my wife came in. I had walked in, and he said, "I thought Lynette was coming." I said, "Oh yeah, she's just behind me." And she come walking in, and OJ walks over, and I've got a whole bunch of business papers on a chair, and he just throws them on the floor. I mean, he just pushes them aside and sit down, sit down. How you been?
Yeah.
Do you want something to eat? Are you thirsty? I mean,
Yeah.
this is just the way he
Yeah.
is.
Hostess.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean, just
hostess.
very nice guy, very personable, and then we, as the day went on, we started talking about him and Nicole and their relationship, and he relayed a lot of very personal things to me. He was looking at possibly buying a house there in Rockingham that was only a few blocks from his house, so that the kids could go back and forth.
Which would have
Because he
been
had told
great.
me that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice
yeah,
way.
because Bundy was, quite a ways away, and they would have to, jump in a car, go, and the kids couldn't just go back and forth.
I got you.
And Nicole had a bad habit with OJ that every time he would get a girlfriend, she'd be like, "Well, let's try to get back together. Let's try to fix this up." And so they will, he'd go, okay, dump the girlfriend. They'd start working on their relationship, and then she'd go, "Well, I need my space."
Hmm.
And then she'd want her space, and then it would all fall apart. And it was back and forth like this. And don't get me wrong, OJ's no saint. He's no Boy
Oh, I'm
Scout.
sure. Wait, I'm
You know,
sure. Wait, is
yeah,
it?
I mean,
Oh, wait.
yeah. Hey, wait a second.
Wait.
but
No.
but no, I mean, and they just it wasn't going to work. And that's what OJ told my wife. And he says, son, we've made the decision. This is only 6 weeks before. He said, we've made the decision that we are going to raise the kids as closely as we can.
Sounds
We're
out.
not going to we're not going to get back together. He says, I just can't keep doing this back and forth thing with her. He said, she'll always be my, she'll always be my ex, she'll be my love, I love her, but this is not going to, this just isn't, I've got to get on with my life, and she's got to get on with hers. And he told me a few other things. There were a few other things we talked about that day about she'd wanted to borrow money from him, and because she had a large debt that she needed to pay, and he didn't pay it for her. And we talked about the abuse and the between him and Nicole. And he had told me, he said, there's only been 2 times in my life I put my hands on Nicole. And he said, one time I had come home and Denise and Nicole were on the back porch and they were smoking pot. No big deal, no big deal, except for Eunice was there, OJ's mom.
Oh.
And when OJ's mom is at the house, you don't do drugs. And he came home and he picked them both up, took them outside and threw them both up in the bushes. Not, didn't hit them, but threw them both up into the bushes.
Wow.
And then the second time we all know about, because it was reported in the news, and that was the New Year's Eve, fiasco. They'd been drinking. They were, they started fighting. And Nicole isn't a small girl. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she is not, she's not one of these little petite Hollywood housewives. She was a beautiful woman, but she worked out, she was muscular, she had a good.
I told she was a strong woman. I get it.
Yeah.
Physically
And
fit,
they'd come home, they had been drinking and fighting, and she kept hitting OJ, and she'd pound on his chest, and he said, I didn't mind, but she hit him in the face, and he came back around and smacked her. And she went down on the floor, and that's when they called, as we all know, they called 911. The police came out. We know now that was Mark Furman. And Mark Furman wanted her to press charges so bad against OJ. And she didn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And he said the next morning, he said, Bruce, he says, when I got up and I saw the bruise under her eye, he said, I felt terrible. He said, I was raised by my mama. He said, you don't hit women. You just don't, and a lot of people don't realize that OJ was raised by just by his mother.
Oh.
His father, the story, a lot of people don't know that OJ's father was gay. And OJ didn't find this out until later in his teenage years. Anybody that's read about it.
Father figure. He probably stayed away.
No, he didn't find this out until much later in life.
Wow.
And, but, his mother had taught him, you don't hit women.
Yeah,
he has sisters, and you don't. So, that a lot of the stuff I've heard, and I find very hard to believe, just because of my relationship with him and the way I've seen him around people. Now, does he have a temper? Yes, he does. People always look back at the 911 call, if you remember, the night that he was at Nicole's house at Bundy. He ends up looking, he went over and ends up, they got in a big fight. She's calling 911. This is OJ, OJ Simpson's here. He's going to kill me. I think she used those exact words, as a matter of fact, on the phone. You could hear him in the background ranting and raving, because he's PO'd because she's got some guy there in the house having sex on the couch, and the kids are upstairs. He's not mad about, the boyfriend. He don't care,
right.
But he's mad because with the kids upstairs. And if you listen to that tape goes on for like 8-9 minutes, and he's ranting and raving. Well, everybody's saying, he's abusive during that whole time. And 911's got the entire tape. He never lays a hand on her. This guy at the time was just steaming mad. I mean, you hear him in the background, and she's going on and on. He never lays a hand on her, because that's not OJ. He doesn't. And that's one of the things that people always saying, well, he's violent. He's a wife beater. He's this. Well, he would have done it then. He would have done it then. And he didn't. He never lays a hand on her. I mean, you can hear him in the background. He is mad. He is PO'd. He never lays a hand on her. Not one time. And I come from a family that my mother and my father fought before their divorce. I mean, physically fought. I saw blood.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I swore that was going to be broken. That cycle would be broken in my lifetime.
Oh,
And
thank God you didn't, yeah.
you know, because I mean, lots of times that's transferred on, and I knew that wasn't right. And
Broke
I've been
that.
lucky, I'm happy to say that, I mean, I've never laid a hand on a woman. My son hasn't, I mean, so I'm
Yes,
you
yes.
just don't,
Right.
you just don't. And I'm glad that cycle was broken, because physical abuse of a woman, there is never a reason ever to hit a woman. And that's why, and that's what OJ, OJ even said, he said, I'm not making any excuses.
Women shouldn't be beating men either.
Yeah,
Not a good thing to bring up now, but I've heard a lot of cases like that too, where I've seen like women would be beaten on a man. To me, no one should be hitting anybody. I don't care.
Nobody, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I've seen cases similar that where you'd be like, I'm not saying you don't ever hit a woman ever, but on the same token, it's like, how do you stop somebody who's attacking you? Like,
You walk away.
Attacking a man. I mean,
You turn around.
You may want to push them off to some degree,
Yeah.
but try to run out of the room before it starts.
Yeah, there's a difference between blocking and then attacking back. Blocking and taking yourself out of the situation.
Yeah, remove yourself when you see it coming on. That's the best way. Get out of the house, get out of the room. Yeah. Right.
And that's what I've taught to my own daughter. That hopefully that whoever she married would not be. And her first husband was abusive. We luckily, she got out of that, and is very happily married now. But with at least with the situation. So, but you're absolutely right. Nobody, there's never a reason for people to, violence is not.
No, and that's why, I mean, again, like you were saying, like when Cole Smith, nobody forget. I mean, not even OJ and Cole, anybody in general. There should not be any physical. Women shouldn't feel like they can beat men up either. Because women, they're not going to hit me. Yeah. That's sorry, that's lame. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm for iTunes for men, and
men are a lot. Absolutely. And men are a lot, lots of times don't feel that they can go and tell anyone that, I'm being abused by a woman. They won't be believed, or they won't, and it does happen. And if that is the case, then they need to speak up, as well as any woman that is being abused needs to speak up.
Because like I said, I do coaching, and I actually coached clients, and they were 10 of domestic violence, believe it or not. Yeah. And that's why I say that. And to listen to some of these stories, I know we're getting off the rant here, we're getting off the trail, but same thing.
It's an important message.
Yeah. When you get this, like, oh my God, that's why women shouldn't be beating on men either. You gotta back that shit off. You don't hit anybody. Nobody should be getting hit. But we'll move on. Let's get back onto OJ and the wife. Now we get to the, and then a couple days later, we have the chase, and he was actually going, the reason he was riding with AC, he was going to Nicole's grave. He was going to her grave to commit suicide. He was very distraught over, this is his ex-wife, but he's still, I mean, the mother of his
children together. Yeah, the mother of his children and everything. He was extremely distraught over this whole thing. And then but all the reporters were there. Everybody was there, and the whole thing, as we know, ended up, they ended up calling him, and he said, he ends up on the phone with the police saying, just let me go to my house, let me turn myself in there, and the rest, went from there.
Probably find it.
Just put in Bronco chase, and you'll get 10 pages of it.
But did they ever? Because I have not. Did they ever find out who did it, or did they ever have an assumption, or whatever happened to that? Did they ever find out? I know he was cleared. He was cleared.
Right. He was found not guilty.
Not guilty, not cleared, not guilty.
And he was found not guilty in a court of law, which probably more than half of America does not believe. And I know the question you're thinking, do I believe he's guilty or not?
I was, wait.
And I'll tell you right now, no, I do not believe he did it. Because I've gone through 4 major trials now, 2 with OJ. Well,
Okay.
actually, all 4 of them involved OJ.
Oh, wow.
But,
So you guys have a lot in common.
yeah, but I've learned a lot about law, and it's not about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mhm.
It's about little snippets here and there. It's lawyers jockeying back and forth, and what is allowed, what's not allowed. Well, we'll let you put this in, but you can't put this in. Okay, but then if you do, then we get to put this in, but you can't put this in. And there's a lot of maneuvering goes on, and a lot of things that can and cannot be used in a court of law. Just like Faye Resnick was Nicole's roommate.
Okay.
And she'd been living in her car before Nicole helped her out.
Oh,
And
wow.
now she's one of the housewives of Housewives of LA. Everybody in the murder that was involved with it came out being rich. Even the guy living in OJ's guest house that didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, Cato Kalin, is a millionaire now.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and if Cato, when they first asked Cato about it, he had no idea what happened. By the time he was done telling his story, if he had told it a time or 2 more, he would have been there and have witnessed it. Because it just kept getting
Oh, no.
embellished
Yeah, I got
more
you. I
and
got what you're
more
saying.
and
Oh,
more.
my God. Wow.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, everybody. I mean, one of the kids. There was a picture came out in the National Enquirer of the kids posed on Nicole's grave, and a lot of people accused me and my business partner at the time of doing that.
Oh.
And we said, no, we didn't do it. It turns out it was Denise Brown had done it and sold those photos. Yeah, we were told.
I know what you're saying. So in
It.
other words, everyone that was surrounded around that became wealthy because they were feeding off and just they were kind of building another story, right?
They were building another story.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Wow.
and Fred Goldman, and I mean, he
Where
was
was
working.
Nicole? I'm sorry, but where was Nicole's roommate the night that Nicole was murdered? She had a roommate, right? She wasn't in the house. I don't want to get like an investigator now, but
Yeah, it was Resnick. But from what I'm told, she was in rehab.
really?
Yes, and there are theories
I was going to
about
say
that.
the woman that was living with her, so she wasn't even in the house. She was in
No,
rehab.
and they are a half-inch difference in height, just about.
Mhm.
Basically the same haircut, his hairstyle and everything. They look very much alike.
Mhm.
And especially if you were to open a door, somebody came to your door and you opened it, it would be very easy to mistake one for the other. Now, one of the rumors is that Nicole and Faye owed north of $50,000 to the Colombians.
Wow.
Remember earlier I said that Nicole tried to borrow money from OJ and he didn't give it to her. Well, and there's rumor that they were actually after Faye Resnick, and then Nicole pays up, and then everybody around LA knows you don't mess with the Colombians. That's one of the rumors.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's your perception of what you've heard. Right. There's no proof to that. I got you. That's what you heard.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so yeah,
Stories.
there were
right?
so
Here we
many,
go.
there's so many things in this whole case. It's like to start with, the police go in, they take a blanket out of the house and cover Nicole's body with a blanket out of the house. They've just contaminated, because OJ's been in and out of that house for a couple of years while she's lived there. So all of her stuff has got his DNA on it.
How long were they divorced? I'm sorry, when this happened.
Oh, a couple of years, 2-3 years.
Oh,
at least.
So it wasn't even like a recent divorce.
No. This isn't just, this
the
didn't
dust should
just
have been settled, right? I think the dust would have settled maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, they've been divorced for a while now. And that's like I say, that's why I say he was looking at getting the house up in Rockingham so that the kids could just go back and forth and they could be, have a mom, have a dad,
Yeah.
and go on. But there was just so many goof ups with this whole trial that people just do not understand. Everybody saw remember the picture in the National Enquirer of Nicole with the whole face that was black and blue and just looked terrible. You notice that was never admitted into trial, in the murder trial, because it couldn't be, because it wasn't a real photo.
Oh my God. What a
Yeah.
fiasco. Meanwhile, this,
Yeah.
poor woman's dead. And then the whole thing was
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, two people, are dead to this whole thing. But when OJ, he flies right back from Chicago, Nicole is dead. Ron Goldman, his knuckles, are missing skin and stuff from fighting. Whoever he fought with, he killed him, stabbed him 20 some times, I believe it was. And then not only did they stab him, but once he was down, they stopped and slit his throat too.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Nicole. Do you ever hear of a Colombian necktie?
Yeah, I don't really. Oh yeah. I mean, that was brutal. I mean, that was just
yeah. And if that's the other thing, if OJ had done it, we all know that the Ron's fight was a fight. Now, Nicole, we know, went down quickly, but Ron was a fight. So OJ should have had, number one, this is a young man in his mid-20s that worked out. We know that he worked out all the time. OJ doesn't have a bruise on him anywhere.
Oh yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
He should have had bruises, he should have had bruises and stuff too. You don't fight somebody and stab them 23 times.
Yeah, you'd have something, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they talk about the cut on OJ's hand. He drops a glass in Chicago, breaks, cuts his finger. They say, oh, he must have done it during the knife fight. Well, then supposedly these are OJ's gloves. Why isn't there a cut in the gloves?
Oh yeah.
That's it. And it's just there's just so many things that outside of the trial that I've seen, the things that aren't admitted into a trial. And like I say, I've gone through 4 major trials and I see how things are negotiated. You can use this, but you can't use this. Well, then we can use this and you can't use this. I saw it in my own trial with, that we'll get into a little bit.
I'm gonna roll right into that.
But, that was, the same thing. And it's just amazing how trials, and then the media. The media is something else. You can end up saying you could end up saying the sky was blue and they'll report that it was blue with light shades of gray and some red over here.
Yeah, well, they always inflate and distort and everything else anyway. I mean, I don't want to bring up COVID. I mean, no, but yeah, I mean, come on. I think we're going back into that. But yeah. Next.
And they take little excerpts from here and there and everything else. It's just like the 911 call, we were talking about.
Yeah.
He's a violent man, but he never hit, So it's that type of thing. And then 3 weeks later, they find the police are all over this Bundy. 3 weeks later, in the middle of the gate, they find OJ's thumbprint. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a lifted print that was planted. And who planted it?
Wow.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff, there's reasons I say that I don't believe he did it, and it's unfortunate. But then we went through, and we went through the whole trial, and after the trial, OJ gets out, and then we have the civil trial, which the judge he's found responsible, not guilty. He's found responsible for their murders. Now, I'm not quite sure how that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
See, it's a different degree of proving something.
Yeah, would that mean responsible, meaning he led it into something, like somebody else did this for him?
Yeah, they say they find him responsible for. I love the way it's not guilty. He's responsible.
But he didn't have to serve any time. There was nothing to do with that.
No,
right?
there was a monetary.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it was a
that's
monetary fine.
gotcha. Okay, so then he's off, done. He's gone, and now a year or so, a couple years go by, and now
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had a
He
confrontation
lived.
with him.
Well, before that though, there's some of the fun stuff was,
Oh,
so we're up on the
back it up.
hill, yeah, because he moves out of Bundy. We all know that he lost,
Okay.
I mean, he lost Rockingham,
I didn't mean to rush
and
the
yeah, he's living up on the hill, and a couple of times, because OJ's an interesting character. Went up there one time, and him and Rosie Greer was there, AC was there. There was somebody else there, and they're all playing dominoes. And OJ goes, Bruce, I got to use the bathroom. Here, play for me. I can't play dominoes, especially not with four guys that have been playing all their lives. Dominoes is the thing they do. Dominoes and spades. And I'm going, no, no, no. So I saw, I used to see some of the most interesting people at OJ's house. And then one time, though, Ike Turner came up to OJ's house.
Oh
and my business partner up there. Remember Ike Turner? Tina Turner ex.
Oh, I love Tina Turner. She just passed away. Oh my God, she was such a great singer.
Oh, fantastic singer,
Oh
wasn't she?
yeah, she was an amazing story with her. Oh my God, I loved it. Yeah.
But he drags this gal up there, this gal that he's trying to promote. He brings his guitar and a little tiny amplifier, and he comes up there going, OJ, you got to hear this girl sing. And me and my business partner, we're sitting out in the another room at the grand piano, listen to Ike playing his guitar and this girl singing for OJ and his friends. And we were sitting there and said, could you imagine if we recorded this and sent it to TMZ? Here is Ike Turner.
Yeah.
The guy that, supposedly almost beat Tina to death. And OJ Simpson, the guy that half of America thinks is guilty of murder.
I didn't even want to say that when you first told me those two were connected. I was like,
yeah, that's the connection. I mean, here they are, and we're going, man, we could make $50,000 off this, but that wasn't our thing.
You could have turned that story right around.
Yeah, it was funny. So it was stuff like that. But OJ was he was still a regular guy. He had a gal walk up to him on the street one time, and put her hand out, and she says, and he shook her hand, and she goes, I always wanted to meet a murderer. And OJ just looked at her, did not skip a beat, and he just goes, it's too bad you still haven't.
Oh, wow. Well, that was a good comeback. But oh, wow.
Yeah. He's just calm. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't get angry. He just tells her, it's too bad you still haven't.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
And walks on. That's the way. But it's unbelievable. We went down to, and afterwards, OJ ends up moving to Florida. And that's when he really changed a lot. Mm-hmm. A lot of things changed with OJ when he moved to Florida. He was doing, he kind of got a kind of a gangsta.
We could have done a series with you, a series podcast, and really.
Well, if I'm going on too long, just say so.
No, I'm just like, well, no, I love this, but yeah, you could be a series. Just saying. But
it was. Well, and I always
bring it back again, but we're still going. Let's go. We still got some time on the clock.
Okay. Well, yeah, because there's some interesting stories there.
Yeah, I think we're going to definitely bring it back again. Oh, well, yeah. We're still talking. We got more to talk. I'm just saying.
Okay, but yeah, he ends up going down to Florida.
Ellie's being nice about it.
Yeah, because I mean, I dealt with so many other athletes besides just OJ. But that's what everybody always says. Oh, that's Bruce Fromong, the guy that was robbed by OJ.
Well, I'm going to be honest.
Forget about the years of everything I've done with other athletes.
Well, let me be honest. Let's. Okay, now that we're saying it, I met you back in 2016 when I went out to Vegas. We have a mutual friend, Bert. We went into Vegas. And we were working on Beams to Legends, right? That's how I met you. And I'm going to be honest. That's how I was introduced to you. He's like, this is the guy who was responsible for putting OJ in prison. I'm like, okay, tell me the story. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I was introduced to you. Not as memorabilia, sports, and stuff like that. So yeah,
all the other stuff I've done in my life. Yeah, all the other stuff I've done.
You did a lot, right?
Yeah, people know me as the guy robbed by OJ.
Yeah. Well, that's how
I mean, I've been in two different movies about OJ.
Oh wow.
If you remember Made in America, and then ESPN did theirs.
Oh, okay.
They did the one with Cuba Gooding Jr. and that group. and then ESPN did theirs. It was a lot more, it was all done with actual footage and stuff, which I thought was a lot more accurate portrayal of how things really were. But yeah, it's been an interesting life.
Yeah, and on my mind is thinking here, like, wow, I mean, I don't want to leave us as a cliffhanger. I don't, but I'm thinking, God, maybe we just maybe come back and do another podcast. But we'll move on a little bit, and then we're gonna talk about and I hate to do that, because like I said, you have enough content.
Well, 2001 was an interesting year.
Yeah, that's what
because before the incident here, we went down. OJ had always, my partner used to tell OJ, because he lost, as we all know, he was fined $33 million, which he said he would never pay. And so he gets his pension, and that was it. Well, my business partner came up with the idea, you ought to do a porno. That's my business partner. Yeah, my business partner goes, OJ, you ought to do a porno. And OJ goes, oh, I can't do that, man. What would I tell my kids and stuff?
Right.
But he says,
not that he couldn't do it morally,
Yeah, but he goes, but if I were trapped and somebody did one without my knowledge, then afterwards I could tell my kids that I didn't know anything about it.
As he smiles at the camera.
Yeah, OJ has always been.
Wait, I don't know.
OJ's
he might not have got away with that. He might not have got away with that lie, saying, "Oh, I didn't see the camera."
Well, you don't. If it's done. And the thing is 2001. My business partner, I'm Mike Gilbert, at the time. We went down to Florida, and we were down there for 10, 12 days with the. Christy Prody was in on it. That was his girlfriend at the time. They had gotten another girl, and they were going, and there was a company that already paid upfront money. I mean, we're talking a big sum of money to do this porn film without OJ's knowledge. So, yeah, when we were down there, but here's one of the big things. So that this is what ended my relationship. Part of what ended my business relationship with my ex-business partner, Mike Gilbert, is that while we were down there, Mike came back to the room one day, and he made some comments. And I said, what are you talking about, Mike? And he goes, and he pulls a pair of panties out of his pocket.
Wow.
And he said, I just had sex with Christy Prody. I said, what?
Oh my God.
And he makes a couple other comments, very rude comments. And I said, Mike, you're no better than Marcus Allen. Because as we all, a lot of people, know about Marcus and Nicole, having a little tryst before. But they were, Nicole was divorced at that time. Marcus wasn't married, and OJ forgave him. So, it's no big deal. But, and I got, and I said, Mike, better than, and because Mike had always, from that time on, had always been down on Marcus Allen about, having a relationship with Nicole. And I told Mike, I said, Mike, you're no better than Marcus Allen.
Yeah. I got what you're saying.
He said, no, this is different. I mean, this is different. I said, no, it's not, Mike. That's OJ's girlfriend. And that was the start of our breakup as a company.
Yeah. Oh, dirty dog.
Yeah. And OJ has never heard this before.
Well, I hope we ain't watching this podcast.
Yeah, because I mean, and they ended up while we were down there, they ended up shooting the porno. Christy and this girl, they were all out of the club, got drunk, went back to a room. And the funny thing is that OJ starts making a comment that, yeah, Mike's always laughed about making a porno without my knowledge so that I could deny. And he's walking around the room. He says, yeah, they'd probably put a camera in this flower pot. And he picks up the flower pot and he moves it. And he moves like 4 or 5 different things in the room.
Oh my God.
They all had cameras in them.
Oh my God.
He moves all the cameras. So they only got a few. And so it wasn't useful. So afterwards, OJ said, oh, and Mike told him about the whole thing. And
Wow.
he said, oh man, I can't believe that. The
Oh,
one time I could actually say I didn't know it was being done. And I goof it up.
oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's the reason we had gone down there. They had been together, I mean, Mike had been his friend before I ever knew OJ.
Mm,
And then, and to be, and to
wow.
say all these things about Marcus Allen and then to,
And do the
you
same
know,
thing. Well, you
yeah,
got
do
to
the
be careful
same
with that
thing.
too, right? They always tell you the ones that are doing most of the talking when it comes
Yeah,
to, oh, no, 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 they're the ones that are first, they're the
yeah.
first ones to,
Oh, yeah,
do the
yeah.
crime.
Well, and I
Yeah,
found out a lot of things about my ex-partner that,
yeah.
he wasn't that great a guy. So,
Wow. So,
you know,
what else do you want to talk about? Because like I said, we really had enough time to probably do at least 2 or 3 different podcasts. And I'm not even saying that as a joke. I'm really meaning it because you have
yeah,
a lot of content. You have a lot
yeah,
to say. It's great. And I'll be honest with you, Bruce. I didn't know you had this much to say.
yeah,
It's great. It's great. I mean, but I'd like to let's get one more story in, and then I definitely think we'll definitely do another podcast as well. What I want to do right now is we're gonna, you know, we'll conclude and we'll definitely gonna have another podcast, story time with Bruce. But yeah, what I want to do is I do want to thank you for sharing your stories, your insights, your expertise, and everything you've shared with us on Story Time with Ellie. And as our story and our motto we say is everybody has a story. What's yours? And I want to thank you, Bruce, once again. And we are going to bring you back, and we will have a definitely follow-up podcast on your story.
absolutely.
Okay, this is going to be cool. Yeah, we'll meet up
It'd
again.
be my pleasure.